Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulihil Kareem. So in the previous lessons, we were going through the tasrif and the reading the gardans, fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat. I want to explain to you the theory behind what we're doing. So obviously in that lesson, you'll continue just practicing reading them, getting used to them, familiar with them. But here I want to explain to you briefly what it's all about. What do these make up? Okay, so we're going to explain what sarf is, the concept of persons, and what's called sigha. We'll explain this in this lesson, inshallah. So what is sarf? So as I explained to you yesterday briefly, is that in English you have grammar. Okay? When you have English grammar, it covers everything, as far as I know. I don't think there are any particular separate subjects which cover a particular part of English grammar. English grammar covers everything. And then you have different chapters. And even initially in Arabic, if you look at some of the earlier books, a lot of the rules of sarf is also mentioned in the end of the books of Nahwa, beginning of the books of Nahwa. But as time developed, or as time passed by for ease of students, sarf was made into a separate subject. So basically what happened was that the rules regarding nouns, and not only nouns, but nouns, sentences, and that kind of grammar was put into a subject called Nahu, which we're doing. We're doing those entry-level books and workbooks. And with verb, the conjugation of verbs, because conjugation of verbs is important, and it also covers many different aspects, and there's so many different rules and regulations regarding the conjugation of verbs. That's why it's made into a separate subject, which we call sarf. And sarf, what does sarf mean? It means umrah, sarraf, what's a sarraf?
Change.
So what does he do? He gets money from one currency and changes another currency. So basically when you get fa'ala, I make it into fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat. Then yaf'alu, yaf'alani, yaf'aluna. If'al, la taf'al, fa'alun, maf'ulun. Then you continue to fa'ala and he's taf'ala. You haven't done these yet, but I'm just saying that one note or that one verb, we can conjugate it to many. We're going to sarf of it. We're going to make it and change it over different patterns to give different meanings, different subjects, different tenses. That's what sarf is about. That makes sense? So it's all Arabic grammar, but it covers a very particular form of a very particular niche section of the Arabic language. But it's very important. Okay? So that's what sarf is really about. So it's part of grammar. It's not separated, but because it's very important and it has so many different rules, we just make it separate to a separate subject. Okay? Yeah? Right. Now, first I want to explain to you the concept of persons. So let's say, for example, this green little background we have here. It's our conversation. That's not Wi-Fi connection. That's actually his speech. Okay, so I think this is Wi-Fi connection. It's his speech. His speech. So he's talking. So he's speaking, he's talking. And who's he talking to? Somebody else. So in the conversation, you have the speaker and you have the person who's addressing. And then you can have what? A third person who's not in the conversation. So you call this the first person, which is called Al-Mutakallim, the speaker. So when a person is speaking, he can be talking about himself, or he can talk to the second person, the person he's talking to, which is called Al-Hadir. It's called Al-Mukhatab, the person you're talking to, but he's the Hadir. Basically, he's the person you're addressing. He's present. Hadir literally means present. So he's present in this conversation. He's the speaker, and he's present in the conversation. Okay? And he's not present, he's absent, he's not part of the conversation. He's called the ghaib. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? In English you call this it's the first person, second person, and third person. So the speaker is called what? Mutakallim. And in English it's called the first person. Who you're speaking to, he's the hadir. I mean he's present. And the third person, he's ghaib, he's not present in the conversation. So keep these three in mind. The first, second, and third. The mutakallim, the hadir, and the ghaib. Make sense? So first, second, and third person. So he will say I. When he's speaking about himself, what would he say? I done this, I done that. If he's talking to him, you done this, what would he say? You done this, you done that. And if he's talking to him about him, what would he say? He. So you see? So first, second, and third person. And you have mutakallim, you have hadha, and you have al-ghaib. Does that make sense? Okay. So the Arabic terms are what? First, the English is first, second, and third. And the Arabic, what do we call this? Al-Mutakallim. Then we have Al-Hadir. And we have Ghaib. Okay. So what happened now? We'll have a table. And it'll have three different aspects. For example, it's an English, we have an English verb. Spoke. So I spoke, you spoke, he spoke. So that the first person is called Mutakallim, Hadir, and Ghaib. As if you notice from here, we go first, second, third. In Arabic, we're going to go backwards. Third, second, first. That's how, well, you don't have to, but this is the way it makes it easier to make the tasrif and the gardans or the table you have there, the paradigm. Okay? Right. So we got this again. So what if we don't have one person? The people speaking are plural. You get what I'm saying? They don't want to say I, they want to say we. Or the people you're talking to are more than one. So in English you have you refers to singular plural, but in Arabic might have different for that. So you have first person, but not singular anymore. What is it? Plural. You have second person, and now this can also be plural. And you can have third person, which is also what? Plural. You understand? Make sense? Right. Moving on. This is called now we. If it still says you, or what do you say about these? If he is talking, if they are talking to them, or even they're talking about somebody who's not in the conversation, what would you say? They or them. You got it? But in Arabic, you've got another, you do this nahwa very shortly. The Arabs, they have a special tense for two. In English we have singular, and anything after singular is called what? Plural. But the Arabs, because two is also quite a common thing, so they have singular, something called dual. So a special form for two people. So they don't have singular dual, they have singular, sorry, they don't have singular plural, they have singular, plural, but before plural doesn't start at two for them. In English, plural is what? More than one. In Arabic, plural is more than two. And for two, they have a special word called dual. And that's called tasniya. You'll learn that in the nahwa shortly, inshallah. So then you can have another form where you're speaking about two. So the speaker is two, the people you're speaking to are two, or the people you're talking about are two. Obviously, it won't change because you don't have a separate form for two. You still be we, you, and they. But in Arabic, you now be dual. Okay? So you can have singular, dual, or plural. You get what's happening? How this table is building up. And then the singular is called wahid. You learn this in nahwa very shortly. The plural is called tathniya. What's it called? Tathniya. So tathniya means two, dual. And the plural is called jama'. You go jama'at. It's a group of people. So you have a jama', a group. Okay? Now if you look at it now, what's going to happen? You're going to have third person, second person, first person. But then each of them can be what? Singular, dual, plural. Wahid tasniya jama', wahid tasniya jama', wahid tasniya jama'. That's how, see how we get in our table? How it's made up. So one addresses the third person, one section addresses the second person, and one addresses the first person. And each of these are now broken down into what? Singular, dual, plural. Wahid tasniya and jama'. So you understand? Am I making sense? Yeah? Sure? Right. Going ahead, we can also have another problem. If it's a female. In English, I is I, and you is you. We have he and she separate. They is not separate. They can be both masculine and feminine. But you have to take into consideration, you have same thing again. But everything, but is now, this is feminine. Then, dual. And then, plural. See what I'm saying? So now our table, so if it's masculine, we call it what? Masculine and feminine. We can deal with two aspects now. Masculine is called mudhakkar and feminine is called mu'annath. These terms will be discussed slowly in the nahwa. Okay? Even if you remember the English terms now, will be enough. But you have to get used to the terms slowly eventually as we go along. Okay? So what's happened now, this is what we end up with. Because, let's say for example I'm speaking. I can speak about a male, I can speak about two males, and I can speak about three males. I can speak about one female, two females, three females. I can be speaking to one male, two males, or to three or more males. I can be speaking to one female, to two females, or more than one female. And then I can be talking about myself as a male. I can be talking about us as a group. Then it can be female talking about herself, two females talking about themselves as three or more females. So in theory, we can have 18. You get what I'm saying?
So an Arabic statement is actually a very accurate statement.
Yes. It's more accurate in English.
Yeah.
But what happens now? The Arabs, they do a bit of English stuff. When it comes to the first person, they only have wahid and plural. They don't have dual. There's no such thing as we dual. They don't have a form for that. And then they don't differentiate between feminine and masculine. I guess in the conversation you can probably see who's speaking maybe. So they don't have a separate one for masculine and feminine. They only have, so here is 6. That's how much? 12, and then here only have 2. That's why we have how many on our table? 14. So each of the 14 represents a separate word. But not a separate word, but a separate person doing the action. Do you understand? So now you can learn these words. You have ghaib, mudhakkar, and then you have wahid tasniya jama'. That's why you have, remember I told you the threes, you go in the order. So 3, 6, 9, 12, and then 14. And I said, if you want a tip, what you can do is use your hand. So in your hand you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you use this for 1. So wahid tasniya jama'. Wahid tasniya jama'. This is for the ghaib. Then wahid tasniya jama'. These little bends you have. So wahid tasniya jama'. Wahid tasniya jama'. That's a 4. And then for this one you just use the thumb. 1, 2. So if you're reading fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata, fa'alna, fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum, fa'alti, fa'altuma, fa'altunna, fa'altu, fa'alna. So you know where you are. If you get mixed between the ta, the tu, the ti, you can use that as a guideline initially to get you practicing. So you have, in theory you have 3, 6, but then this is only merged into 1. So you have 5. So your fingers will work perfectly. And each of those things you learn gives a separate meaning. Okay? And each of these is called what? A sigha. What's it called? Sigha. So fa'ala is one sigha. Fa'ala is another sigha. Fa'alu is another sigha. So each one of these is called what? A sigha. And the plural is called what? Siyagh. Okay? And this whole thing now is called what? A tasrif. Or in English you call it a paradigm. You got it? So now, what happens now? So in this table we have, I've written it down in the logical order. But when we pronounce this, we pronounce it like this. We say, look, wahid muzakkar ghaib. What we do is we pronounce it like this. Wahid muzakkar ghaib. So so fa'ala is called what? Wahid, because it refers to one person who is muzakkar and who is ghaib. Then you got tasniya, muzakkar ghaib. Jama' muzakkar ghaib. Wahid mu'annas, that's how we go through them. That's the names of them. Wahid mu'annas, wahid muzakkar ghaib. Tasniya muzakkar ghaib. Jama' muzakkar ghaib. And then it goes all the way down. So ghaib, and the hadir, and the mutakallim. That's how you name the sighas. Okay? Does that make sense? So you might have figured it out by now. So let me explain to you. Why do you have a sigha? Because look, in English what do you have? I sat, you sat, she sat, we sat, they sat. What are these sentences made up of? How many words? 2, because the subject is what? Separate. You have to say, so you have sat and all of them, but then the subject is mentioned separately. Who is doing the sitting here? I, you, she, we, they. You have to mention a subject separately. And in Arabic you don't have to do that. Why? Because each of those sighas represent a separate person. So for example, I sat is what? Jalastu. So you have the 2, the last one, because the last 2 in there are the mutakallim, the speaker. So now when you say jalastu, that includes verb and the subject. There's no need for a separate I. For example, in Arabic, I is ana. You don't say jalastu ana or ana jalastu. You can say that, but that's another discussion altogether. But jalastu includes both of them. You understand? So you sat. So that's why you have different sighas. So you have one verb. Like for example, if you have the word qara'a, to read. Now, you can use that verb alone. You don't need to mention a separate subject. You can mention a subject inside. Whether it's I, whether it's you, whether it's he, she, or they. And then each of them can have now masculine, feminine, singular, dual, and plural. That's why you have all these 14 different sighas. So like jalasta, jalastat, jalasna, jalasu. So all of them, the verb has a fa'il is built in. Okay? Right? So the key words that we have to learn here, wahid. What's wahid mean? One. Then dual is what? Tathniya. And plural is jama'. So this is how you describe the number. Whether it's 1, 2, or 3, who you're talking about. And after you have mudhakkar for what? Masculine. And mu'annath is for feminine. So mudhakkar masculine, mu'annath is what? Female, feminine. Then ghaib is what? Absent, which means third person. He's not present in the conversation. Hadir is a person you're speaking to. And then mutakallim is the speaker himself. And a tasrif is what? The whole thing is called a what? A tasrif. And Urdu, if you're doing Urdu, it's called gardan. Which means like to change, for gardan. But we call it, I'm using Arabic, so it's called tasrif. And then each tasrif is made up of how many? 14 sigha. And the plural of sigha is what? Siyagh. Make sense? And then your first person, it's good to know the English terms, the first person, second person, and third person. And the paradigm. Yeah. So do you understand why what we're learning? So we're learning these tasrif, or these paradigms, so that we are now able, so when you get a verb, for example, you get the word fatah. Fatah means to what? Open. Correct? Now Now fatah is open now. Once you have that word, you can then do the sarf of it. Tasrif. You can change it around to suit your conversation. If I say I open, fatahtu. You open, fatahta. If I'm speaking to the female, fatahti. Speaking to a female, speaking about a female who's not in the conversation, fatahat. About a male who's not in the conversation, fataha. Because it's all built in. Do you understand what that table is about now? Make sense? Any questions?
How do you address a mixed group?
You give preference to the male. That's the Arabic rule.
And in Arabic, you know how you could draw even Urdu, like say two or dhamma, like as a...
No, in Arabic there's no reference to for respect. You just have, you just use what is in front of you. Okay? Yeah, any other questions? Okay.